Have you ever imagined what the top of a mushroom plant is called? People do call it an umbrella shape, but no, it's not an umbrella shape. It's called a pilus. Hi everyone, so today we're going to be looking at a very interesting topic, which is classifications under kingdom fungi and kingdom plantae. So quickly, let's move to kingdom fungi. The kingdom fungi are heterotrophic plants that lack chlorophyll, roots, stems, and leaf. I listed 4 things here, right? The first one is chlorophyll, second one roots, third one stems, and the fourth one the leaf. Okay? And I said in my previous class that heterotrophic nutrition are nutrition that does not produce their own food, instead depends on other means of food. Okay, they depends on other sources, like animals are heterotrophic, which depends on other animals to feed. Okay, we humans, we are heterotrophic, which depends on other plants like vegetables, meats to survive. Okay, we can't produce our own food, which is called autotrophic nutrition. Example of the kingdom fungi are toadstool, bread molds, which is also called the rhizopus, slime molds, mushroom, yeast, etc. Okay, so the kingdom fungi are multicellular organisms which are made up of different cells, like I explained in my previous class, and unicellular organism, but few are unicellular organism. Okay, example of the unicellular organism are the yeasts. Okay, so they are mostly multicellular, but few are unicellular, which is the yeasts. Okay, so they carry out saprophytic mode of nutrition, which is they rely on dead and decaying organic matter to feed. So the kingdom fungi has a body that is made up of chitin. They reproduce asexually by spore formation. They store their carbohydrates in form of glycogen. Okay, they store their carbohydrates in form of glycogen. So in their body they have one thread-like substance. It's like a branch filament. It's like a thread-like design on their body, and that thing is called hyphae. Okay, that hyphae now is collectively called a mycelium. When I said collectively called, it means when they are put together. You understand? Not a single one. The single one is called hyphae, but when they are grouped together, it's called a mycelium. So the kingdom fungi has a parasitic fungi and a saprophytic fungi. Okay, so the parasitic fungi has an absorptive branch which is used to capture food nutrients, and that branch is called the hostoria. Okay, it's called the what? Hostoria. So now let's move to the bread molds. The bread molds are also called the rhizopus. Like I said earlier, the bread molds are also called the what? The rhizopus. So the bread molds possess a spore sac which bears spore, and that spore sac is called the sporangium. Okay, or you can call it the sporangia. Okay, so the bread molds have an horizontal hyphae. When I said horizontal hyphae, it's like this. It's like this horizontal hyphae, which is called the stolon, and a vertical hyphae. A vertical hyphae is the one standing upright like this, and horizontal is slant like this. Okay, and that vertical hyphae is called the sporangiophore. They possess a root-like hyphae called the rhizoids, which is used for attachment and hold fast. When I mean hold fast, it means that it serves as a support to the plant. Okay, so quickly let's move on to the mushroom. The mushroom has a shape at the top that looks like an umbrella. People do call it umbrella, but it's not called an umbrella. It's called a pilus. Okay, so the part of a mushroom that serves as a reproductive function is found just below the pilus. Okay, so it has a gill-like hyphae, serve as a reproductive function. Okay, so the part where the head, that means the pilus, and the tip are joined together, that means the middle, the part that join them together, the part that join both the head, that is the pilus, and the tail, which is the tip. Okay, the part that join them together are called annulus. annulus. Okay, so like I said in my previous class, I said an association between a fungi and an algae is called a lichen. Okay, and an association between a fungi and roots of higher plants, okay, is called mycorrhizal association. So now let's move on to the kingdom Plantae. The kingdom Plantae are divided into two, which is the vascular and the non-vascular plants. So the non-vascular plants are made up of the Thallophyta and the Bryophyta, while the vascular plants are made up of the Pteridophyta and the Spermatophyta. So let's look at the non-vascular plants, and under the non-vascular plants we are going to talk about the Thallophyta. You can also call them the Thallophytes. So the Thallophyta have no roots, stem or leaf. They have no roots, stem or leaf, okay, and they have a thallus body, which results in their name thallus. Thallophyta, thallus, Thallophyta, thallus body, Thallophyta, thallus body. Okay, so the thallophytes are made up of algae, except the blue-green algae. You know, in my previous class I talked about the blue-green algae are under the kingdom Monera, but we're looking at the kingdom Plantae. Okay, so under the kingdom Plantae you see the non-vascular plants, which is Thallophyta and the Bryophyta. So now under Thallophyta we are going to look at what Thallophyta is made up of, and it's made up of algae except the blue-green algae, which is also called the cyanobacteria, and this blue-green algae falls under the kingdom Monera. I said it in my last class, you guys can go and watch it. So the Thallophyta reproduce asexually by cell division, fragmentation, spore formation, etc., and they reproduce sexually also. So under the Thallophyta you see the brown algae, the red algae and the green algae, like I said earlier. So under the green algae you see the volvox and the spirogyra, and note this, the volvox exist as a colony. Okay, they exist as a colony. When I mean a colony, they are not found alone, they exist together in their territory. They exist together. When I said in their territory, I don't mean that I'm talking about the volvox, but I just reasoned something like bees. That's why I said territory. I reasoned something, you know, bees in their territory, you cannot find them alone. They are always grouped together. There are always many. They move in a colony. So a colony means something that is grouped together. Okay, so volvox also exists as a colony. So the Thallophyta have brown algae. Example of this brown algae are the kelp, the sargassum, etc. So the thallophytes possess a root-like structure, which is called the holdfast. Like the name holdfast is used to hold the plant in place, to position it well. Okay, remember that they don't have root, stem and leaves, so they'll be probably very, very light and easy to break. Okay, so they possess a light holdfast, which is used to hold them in place. So quickly, let's look at the Bryophyta. You know, I said thallophytes and bryophytes are under non-vascular plants. So let's look at the bryophytes. The bryophytes are considered as the first true land plants, and they lack a true roots, stems and leaf. Therefore, they possess a rhizoid, which is used as their holdfast. You know, because they don't have a true root, stem and leaf, they need a rhizoid for support. And they possess alternation of generation, where their gametophyte phase is their independent phase and their sporophyte phase is their dependent phase or stage. Okay, so the Bryophyta are regarded as amphibians of plant nation or plant kingdom because they require water for sexual reproduction. They require water. Without water, they won't be able to what? Reproduce. So an example of the Bryophyta are the moses, liverworts, etc. So let's quickly touch the moses before we move on to the vascular plants. So the moses possess a rhizoid structure, like I said earlier. They possess a rhizoid structure which is used for which serve as an holdfast and used to hold the plants in place, and also used to absorb nutrients and water from the soil. Okay, So in a mosaic plant, the part where spores are formed is called the capsule. It's at the top. It's called the capsule. So the main difference between a vascular and a non-vascular plant is their vascular bundles, which also known as their supporting tissues. So quickly, let's move on to the pteridophyta, which is under the vascular plants. So the pteridophyta are also called the seedless plants. An example are the fern. The fern are made up of adventitious roots. So the ferns undergo alternation of generation, whereas their sporophyte phase is now their independent phase or stage, and their gametophyte phase is now their dependent phase or stage. You know, I said the bryophytes that their gametophyte phase or stage is their independent stage, and their sporophyte phase or stage is their dependent phase or stage. So now in fern, their sporophyte phase is now their independent phase or stage, and their gametophyte phase is now their dependent phase or stage. So the leaf of a fern is called a fons. Okay, they have an horizontal stem. You know, I said horizontal as slant like this. Horizontal stem called the rhizome. So now the male part of a fern is called the antheridium, and the female part of a fern is called the anthrogynium. Okay, so a group or a collective of sporangium is called a sori. So now let's look at the spermatophyta. The spermatophyta are regarded as seed plants. That means they produce seed. Okay, and they are divided into two, which is the gymnosperm and the angiosperm. So let's look at the gymnosperm. The gymnosperm are characterized by a naked seed plants, which are embodied in a structure called the cones. The gymnosperm produces naked seed, which are embodied in a structure called the cones. An example of these gymnosperms are the cycad, the ginkgos, the conifers, etc. So quickly, let's move on to the angiosperm. So let's look at the second one, which is the angiosperm. The angiosperm are flower producing plants, and they are protected with a fruit, and they are divided into two, which is the monocotyledon and the dicotyledon. From the name mono, you know it's one, and the name di, you know it's two. So let's look at the unique characteristics of these two. So now I'm going to give you the differences between a monocotyledon and a dicotyledon. So like I said, mono means one and di means two. So in a monocotyledon, their seed are produced in one cotyledon, and in a dicotyledon, their seed are produced in a two cotyledon. You see the difference? And in a monocotyledon, their vascular bundles are scattered across the plants, and a dicotyledon plant, their vascular bundles are arranged. Did you see the contradiction there? Did you see the difference? Okay, now in a monocotyledon, they possess a parallel venation. That means when you see a leaf that has a parallel line like this, that leaf is likely to be from a monocotyledon plant. And a dicotyledon plant possess a net venation. You will see it looks like this, as net shape, a net venation, and that leaf will likely be from a dicotyledon plant. Okay, so the monocotyledon possess a fibrous root, and the dicotyledon possess a tap root. An example of a monocotyledon plant are all cereal plants. All cereal plants are a monocotyledon plant. Another example is still the maize plants. Okay, an example of the dicotyledon plants are the cowpea plants, the yam plants, etc. And you can easily know a dicotyledon plant by the possession of a thick bark. Their trees are normally big, but there's an exception. Palm tree is a monocotyledon plant, but I know you must have wondered, palm tree is supposed to be a dicotyledon plants. But no, there is an exception to that, which makes palm tree a monocotyledon plant. So quickly, let's move to the last one that we're going to talk about for today, which is the structure of flowering plants. So the flowering plants have two main parts, which is the vegetative part and the non-vegetative plants. Like you hear in the name, vegetative plants are made up of the roots, stem, the leaf. And the parts in that vegetative plant that carry out photosynthesis is the leaf. Okay? So the non-vegetative plant is also called the reproductive part. If you cannot reproduce in a plant, the rest function will fall under the vegetative parts. Okay, so the reproductive parts are the flowers. The flowers are the one that can reproduce in a plant, are the one that give birth to more seeds from the flowers and therefore cause seeds to reproduce. So the vegetative part is made up of the roots, stem and leaf, and the non-vegetative plant is also called the reproductive plant. Is made up of the flowers. The flowers are the one that is responsible for reproduction. So let's look at the vascular bundle. I know you guys must have heard me say vascular bundle, vascular bundle. So what really is vascular bundle? Vascular bundle are divided into different parts like the xylem, the phloem. We're only going to talk about those two in this class, okay? So the xylem are responsible for transporting water across the plant, and the phloem are responsible for transporting food materials. Okay, the xylem used for water and the phloem used for food transportation. So this is all that we're going to talk in this class. See you guys in my next class. Bye.